channel, guys. My name is Jess. So the federal interest rate decision has been released, resulting in a 50 basis point cut and bringing rates down to 5%. We've got a big video today talking about the effects of the recent rate cut on the short-term and macro price action of Bitcoin, and going into detail about what we need to see for a high time frame bullish continuation. Before we get into all that though, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. If you're after even more content, be sure to check out my free Telegram for daily updates as well as crypto and economic news. And if you're interested in my VIP channel, you can get more details over here. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Now, the recent federal interest rate decision has naturally been quite bullish for the entire asset market, but particularly more risky or speculative assets such as Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, which tend to experience a sharper pullback during extended periods of high interest rates. The basis point cut, the 50 basis point cut, has been particularly bullish. Now, the market had already priced in consensus, which was a 25 basis point cut. So when the news came out that it was a steeper cut, that 50 basis point cut, we had a quite positive short time frame reaction. So we dive over onto Bitcoin on the hourly chart here. We can see at 4 a.m. for those of us in Australia, that's when the news came out, we had a sharp increase here in the price of Bitcoin, which went all the way up to 61,300 before we got that immediate news sell-off and went back down to retest horizontal support. Same thing over on S&P 500. We had a massive wick to the upside here before that rapid sell-off event, again taking S&P 500 back down to retest horizontal support. Now, in terms of the future, it does look like rates are headed in a continual downward trajectory. The next rate meeting isn't for another 49 days or 50 days, but the general consensus is right now that it is going to be another ease, and we have a 70% or nearly 70% probability of another 25 basis point cut at that next meeting. So it looks like finally Bitcoin is in for a little bit of a bullish break. So let's dive into the charts and talk about what we need to see in terms of a bullish continuation on first the short time frame and what we need to see on the macro charts for a high time frame bullish continuation. Before we dive into any more analysis, guys, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, Bitunix, where you can get 15% off all of your trading fees and up to $5,500 in sign-up rewards by creating your free account using the link down in my description box. Bitunix is an emerging cryptocurrency exchange committed to providing you with a secure, convenient, and highly functional trading and investment platform. Available across all countries as a non-KYC exchange, get global access to over 150 trading pairs with minimal fees on both spot and futures contracts. Join today to get $5,500 in sign-up rewards and get 15% off all of your trading fees by signing up using the link in my bio or by using the code 1GG3 when you create your account. So starting off with our short time frame analysis, we can see that over the last 2 weeks, moving into the federal interest rate decision, Bitcoin has been traveling in a uptrend, right? We've had consistently higher lows here on the price action. And our structural uptrend started over here on this range low retest of our support at $55,600, and we currently have 2 points of confluence. In terms of horizontal support, our current key level of support, as you guys can see from that recent retest after the interest rate decision came out, is over here at $59,300. So while we continue to hold our key level of horizontal support and above the uptrend, because the trend is your friend until it ends, we can expect Bitcoin to continue in its current short time frame bullish trajectory. So in order to actually have a bullish continuation here, we're going to need to break over our next key level of resistance, and that sits between $61.3 to $61.8 thousand. Moving above that level of resistance, which we can map out using the liquidity swings indicator from the price action all around this area over here, Bitcoin should expect a continuation to the next key level of significance starting at 63,400, right? That was this prior high that we had here in the last breakout of our midline level of resistance in our macro descending channel. And this is where we fail to sustain a bullish continuation to the range high. So I'll talk a little bit more about these key levels of resistance here when we move on to the daily chart in a second, but let's just really quickly continue on with the short time frame analysis. So in terms of bullish continuation, what we need to see is quite clear, right? That break over resistance at $61.8 thousand and facilitating that continuation on the short time frame to this next level of resistance and closing above that on the 4-hour time frame, particularly this buy side liquidity level here at $65,000 on the 4-hour time frame. We can expect that further bullish continuation that takes us into the range high over here. In terms of the bearish case scenario though, so if we do end up losing our current key level of short time frame support at $59.3 thousand, we fall to the uptrend, right? The same thing that we saw over here where we lost horizontal support, but we had structural support over here. Now, falling below the downtrend is where we have our first target of the next level of horizontal support here, target 1 being 57.3 thousand, right? Again, you can map that out using the historical price action over here. And then just below that, falling below that next level of support, we have our second target over here for that short time frame correction, taking Bitcoin down to $55.3 thousand. Now, at both these levels of support, we have a potential to bounce as the buyers step in at these levels of support. And then below that, unfortunately, falling below $55.5 thousand is where Bitcoin is likely to see a range low retest here at 53K. That is the final level of support that we have there before we test the bottom of that high time frame macro descending channel structure. So short time frame has been broken down. I think that's pretty simple. For now though, Bitcoin does look like it's headed in quite a strong trajectory. If we take a look at the RSI, we can see that same strength printed out over here on the oscillator with consistently higher lows on these dips over here. So we have decreasing selling pressure moving into this period of uptrending price action. Moving over onto the daily chart, guys, Bitcoin has just had an exceptionally bullish daily candle close. So we broke through two really important levels of resistance here. That very first one being the midline of our macro descending channel structure. And I've spoken about the midline a couple times, so I'm going to keep it really brief just for the sake of the returning viewers. And the midline is this, blue dotted trend line that we have moving through the channel here. And it essentially breaks the channel in half, right? Moving into the upper half of the channel, we can expect that it is going to be more likely that Bitcoin breaks through resistance to retest the range high in comparison to breaking below all those levels of support and retesting the range low and falling into that second half of the channel, right? So historically, a daily candle close above that blue dotted trend line has resulted in a range high retest. And alternatively, breaking below that midline and getting a rejection of resistance has resulted in the opposite, so a range low retest again. So we've seen that time and time again, with really small nuances, which isn't really important to distinguish right now. So we can see that the most recent daily candle close has broken us above the midline, and it has also broken us above this really important downtrend that has been developing on the price action over the last 2-month period. So this downtrend was important because it was essentially showing us the decreasing strength that Bitcoin was displaying as we approached this upper half of that descending channel structure within the last 2-month period. So the fact that we've had this downtrend break and corresponding action here on the RSI tells us that Bitcoin is now approaching the upper half of the channel with more strength than we have seen displayed in the last 2-month period. So that is a really great sign, guys. Now, before we get too excited, we do have one last level to clear that coincides with all these sort of key levels of price action within this segment, and that is our horizontal trigger at $61.8 thousand. So we are above it right now. We're sitting at 62K, but we still need that daily candle close above that level of resistance, the same one we mapped out here on the short time frame at 61.8K, before we can expect a bullish continuation to the next high. Now, in terms of bullish continuation, when we break out of a downtrend, the first target is always going to be the prior high in the downtrend. So that is over here at $65,000, the exact same level, once again, that we mapped out over here on these short time frame charts where Bitcoin had a double top rejection here. So in breaking above $65,000 on a daily time frame, that is really the final level of resistance that we have here in terms of moving towards the range high. Now, that range high retest is going to sit anywhere between, I think, $68.2 to $68.5 thousand. It really does depend on where in the trend line we target. If it takes a longer time, it's obviously going to be a lower price point as we're in a downtrend, and if it takes a shorter period of time, it's going to be a higher point on the downtrend, right? Now, if we move over onto the weekly time frame, we can see that over the last 2 to 3 weeks, if we pull up the Ichimoku indicator, the baseline, which is the midpoint of the last 26 weeks of price action, this red line over here, has been lining up with this midline level of resistance in our macro descending channel structure. So we're still 4 days away from the next weekly candle close, but if we do actually close above the baseline here, that is again very supportive of the bullish narrative that we have here on the macro time frame. So The Ichimoku indicator isn't everything, right? There are still, it still needs horizontal confluence and, structural validation. So for example, if we take a look over here where we broke above the baseline, we still had a rejection from that horizontal resistance, right? Just because we break above baseline doesn't mean that, everything is bullish. There are still other things to look out for, but it helps us paint that picture and provides supporting evidence of, that bullish trajectory that we're headed in right now. So when we break above that baseline, what Bitcoin is also going to do, if we take a look at RSI, is break above the downtrend that has been developing on the RSI over the last 6-month period of consolidation. So over the last 6 months, we've seen continued decreasing in buying momentum, right, represented by the lower peaks over here, and increasing selling pressure represented by the lower lows over here on the RSI. So as we were approaching this next couple of weeks of price action, as I mentioned in my last video, we were sort of approaching apex sort of period, right, where the downtrend was starting to, contact this base over here at 44.81. Now that base is essentially the marker, or where the RSI was sitting when Bitcoin entered the bull run in October 2023, right? So if we saw momentum drop below pre-bull run levels, that was a really big warning sign, right? That we were seeing such a massive shift in momentum over this 6-month period that potentially we were having a higher likelihood of breaking below this lower trend line over here, testing sell side liquidity at $49,000 and the leading span B, and potentially seeing a breakdown resulting in a macro bearish trajectory. But what we can see here is that in approaching this apex and upon the bullish federal interest rate decision, we've had a breakout of that 6-month long downtrend here in the RSI. So that tells us right now that if we do get the weekly candle close in 4 days with this RSI above this point here, and particularly if it is also above this prior high here at 54.92, we have a much higher probability now of seeing a retest of that range high over here, which again is suggestive of a high time frame bullish continuation here. Alrighty guys, that is all the analysis that I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want even more content, be sure to check out my free Telegram for daily updates as well as crypto and economic news. And if you're interested in my VIP channel, you can get more details over here. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. And if you are a trader, sign up down below to Bitunix, get 15% off all of your trading fees and up to $5,500 US in sign up rewards. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.